Today, the name of the game is Sabotage, and it's sabotage really in every sense of the word. On this episode, we got stories of self-destruction, tells of bands mutilating their songs in concert, even undercutting rival bands on stage. We're going to tell the story of one band member who refused to perform what should have been his group's most iconic gig. Instead, he actually heckled bandmates from the balcony throughout the show. And then there's the offbeat pop star who loathed her headline hit for one of the most iconic movies from the 80s. I mean, she hated it so much, she badmouthed it in the press. She refused to perform it, and she refused to put it on any of her albums for more than a decade. Could her fans ever change her mind? We're going to find out. Finally, there's the band that was determined to flush their career down the toilet. They were given the opportunity of a lifetime to open for one of the biggest acts of the day. The guys took the stage dressed in the other band's wives' clothing, dresses. They gave such an awful performance, it went down in history. But why? Find out next as we count down the top 6 sabotage stories in rock history. Let's do it. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. Make sure, first of all, that you're subscribed because I'm getting a lot of feedback. The people who were once subscribed to this channel were somehow unsubbed by YouTube and they're not subscribed anymore. Make sure that you are, or subscribe, unsubscribe, and subscribe again so that the stuff comes out. Also, make sure to like, share, and comment on this to help keep this channel going. All right, jumping into our sabotage countdown at number 6, I've got an onstage rivalry, pretty crazy, between Aerosmith and Kansas. By 1975, Aerosmith was starting to kick up some momentum with a few gold albums. Their self-titled debut, there was Get Your Wings and Toys in the Attic, all went gold, with songs like Dream On and Sweet Emotion and Walk This Way. Aerosmith's early catalog was on fire, even if the charts didn't really reflect that yet. The band knew it though, and they were already rock royalty in their own minds. Now, as the Boston Bad Boys were making their climb, frontman Steven Tyler was already developing something of a reputation. Word had gotten around that Steven Tyler had a nasty habit of literally pulling the plug on his opening bands if their performances were too good and they were upstage. Tyler had no problem with yanking the power cables mid-set and without warning. Nobody was going to upstage Aerosmith on their own tour. That was his thought. But Kansas, who was touring with Aerosmith on their 1975 Toys in the Attic tour, they weren't about to let that happen to them. At this point, the band out of Topeka, it had only 2 albums to their name, but they could rock with the best of them. So before playing to a home crowd in Wichita, Kansas, the boys from Kansas took some preemptive measures to ensure that their slot didn't run into any unexpected power outages. Actually, the band cleverly had their crew rig the stage with a set of highly visible dummy power lines. And meanwhile, the actual live power cables were discreetly routed across a hidden path on the other side of the stage, so they couldn't be seen. To anyone who didn't know better, the dummy lines looked like the real thing. Now, when Kansas took the stage, they absolutely tore the roof off the place. The crowd was going wild. Just as predicted, Steven Tyler of Aerosmith made a beeline straight for the dummy cables and he started ripping them out. Only the music didn't stop. Steven Tyler stood there with a fistful of dead rubber cables, staring at a band perplexed as they still continued to crank out the music at full volume. Said Kansas guitarist Rich Williams, Steven Tyler came out there to stop our show, but it didn't work. I guess he got quite upset about it. Yeah, no kidding. But it was actually Kansas's bassist, Dave Hope, that got really mad himself. As the story goes, he dropped the bass and he went after Steven Tyler directly. What began as a confrontation between the two quickly escalated into a roadie backstage brawl. Meanwhile, out front, the house lights suddenly flooded the venue. Someone had actually flipped them on mid-song trying to blind the band. But Kansas, they kept playing right through all the chaos. When all was said and done, the crowd gave Kansas a massive ovation. By some dirty tricks, Kansas was able to completely sidestep the act of sabotage. So this is one where they actually got through the sabotage. right, coming in at number 5, we're rewinding back to 1983, and then we're going to fast forward to 1985. This is a Sabotage story that isn't band versus band. This is an artist versus their own song. Talking about Cyndi Lauper going up against the Goonies R Good Enough. All right, here's the story. She actually really hated this song. Let's get into it. In 1983, Cyndi released one of the most successful debut albums in pop history, She's So Unusual. The LP went 7 times platinum and spun off 4 massive top 5 singles, and Girls Just Want to Have Fun, Time After Time, She Bop, and All Through the Night. The album turned Cyndi Lauper into one of the most promising voices of the decade. And as a result, Warner Brothers came knocking in 1985 with stars in their eyes. They actually wanted Cyndi Lauper to contribute a song to their upcoming film, The Goonies. The studio wanted someone who could, embody the spirit of a ragtag group of misfit kids. And Cyndi Lauper, with her wild hair and fearless personality, seemed like the perfect fit. Produced by Steven Spielberg and directed by Richard Donner, The Goonies became, of course, one of the most iconic movies of the 80s. I've seen it 1,000 times. You have too.
Steven Spielberg presents The Goonies.
Released on June 7th, 1985, the film won over a young generation of fans who still adore it to this day. I'm one of them for sure. But the song, The Goonies Are Good Enough, it wasn't initially written for the movie. Cyndi Lauper and her producer Lenny Petz, they were already collecting material for her follow-up album True Colors when Warner came calling. The track actually started out simply called Good Enough. Lyrically, it was more about holding on to a shaky relationship than anything happening in the actual film. But when Petz played the demo for studio executives, they loved it. They went crazy for it. So from there, Cyndi teamed up with songwriters Arthur Steed and Stephen Lunt to polish up the track for the movie. So how did it go from Good Enough to The Goonies Are Good Enough? Well, actually, Steven Spielberg himself asked Cyndi to change that title. He wanted the movie's name worked into it. Putting the word Goonies into a song, not the easiest task in the world. And since the lyrics didn't strictly reference the plot of the movie, he could at least have the title tie into the film. And Cyndi Lauper thought it was a terrible idea. And let's be honest, it was. The Goonies Are Good Enough. I mean, listen to the lyrics and what it used to be about a relationship. Is it good enough? To the Goonies Are Good Enough. It's just kind of dumb, even though I love the movie because it reminds me of the Goonies. But yeah, I agree with Cyndi Lauper. It's good enough for me. So according to the film's music supervisor, Joel Sill, Cyndi Lauper reportedly told Steven Spielberg that he was way out of line. However, because of who Steven Spielberg was and is, she lost that battle and she never quite got over it. Can't really blame her. It's just really bad. To Cyndi Lauper, slapping the movie's name on the front of the title turned her song into a lunchbox selling jingle, her words. And then the music video, that brought even more friction. Steven Spielberg came to the brainstorming session ready to direct and loaded with ideas here. But Cyndi Lauper dismissed them outright. So Richard Donner ended up directing it instead. And what they produced was completely unhinged. The 12-minute 2-part video featured Cyndi Lauper trying to save her family's gas station from WWF wrestlers. It also had a chase sequence through a series of underground caverns, cameos from the cast of the movie and Steven Spielberg and the Bangles that were dressed up as pirates.
Well, the first thing I don't know.
Andre the Giant, he came out of nowhere at the end to save the day. It's a whirlwind of chaos and confusion, and we all loved it. We still do. I mean, come on, it's the 80s. You got to throw that stuff in there, even if it doesn't make sense.
The video wasn't supposed to end like that. Get away from me.
After being released in May of 1985, The Goonies Are Good Enough became a smash hit. It was a top 10 on the Billboard Hot 100. But even then, Cyndi Lauper wanted nothing to do with it. And really from the start, she tried to erase the song from her legacy altogether. I mean, not only did Cyndi Lauper badmouth it in the press, explaining how much she despised it, how much she loathed it every chance she got back then. I mean, for a decade and a half, she refused to play it live. back when she compiled her 1994 Greatest Hits collection, 12 Deadly Sins and then some. Goonies Are Good Enough, it was absent. It was not going to be on there. Of her 8 top 10 hits on the Hot 100, that was the only one that was missing. And said Cyndi, and I quote, "For years I wouldn't even say the name of that song. It was just a lot of noise and wrestlers." However, after nearly 2 decades of fighting it and a lot of fan pressure, Cyndi finally came around, and the Goonies Are Good Enough landed on her 2003 Essentials album as the last track. Just a year earlier, she'd actually played it in concert for the first time since 1987. In 2004, Cyndi started performing a brief a cappella snippet of the chorus. Pretty cool. To her surprise, though, thousands sang back every word. Gen Xers who grew up on the song of the movie. Cyndi realized that despite sabotaging the song for years, fans still loved it. In her 2012 memoir, Cyndi would say that she finally came to understand just how much the Goonies Were Good Enough meant to the entire generation growing up in the 80s, that it was just pure magic. All right, next up, it's the band that taught us how to rock, and then they hit the self-destruct button in the late 70s. Number 4, I've got Kiss. By 1979, Kiss was barely holding it together. The cracks had been showing for quite a while. Both drummer Peter Criss and guitarist Ace Frehley, they'd already floated the idea of quitting the band. But rather than let Kiss implode, the 4 members agreed to step back, record solo albums, and hit the reset button from there. However, the reunion, it didn't go very smoothly. Still, Kiss pushed forward anyway. They released their top 10 album Dynasty in May of '79, along with their number 11 hit I Was Made for Loving You. But after hitting the road in June of 1979 for the Return of Kiss tour, things started going really haywire. The tension finally boiled over on December 8th, just 5 shows from the end of their tour.
Don't miss the return of Kiss.
So during one of those final shows, frontman Paul Stanley turned toward Peter Criss and gestured for him to slow down the tempo because he was going overdrive. He's playing a little too fast. Apparently, Peter Criss's pre-show cocaine dealer had paid him a visit and left him feeling, in his own words, a little edgy, probably playing a little too fast. Now, Peter knew that Paul was right, but being called out in front of an arena full of people really pissed him off. So he slowed his drumming to a crawl. Then Paul Stanley started gesturing wildly for him to bring it back up. Criss wasn't interested. From there, things escalated quickly. Peter Criss stopped playing entirely and started screaming at Paul Stanley, loud enough that people in the audience, they could hear every single word. Said Peter, and I quote, "I just stopped playing. I didn't care anymore." Stanley was furious, and he later wrote in his memoir, "That crossed the line. It's one thing to sabotage things off stage, and God knows he'd done plenty of that, but this was in front of people who paid to see us." Gene Simmons and Ace Frehley, they were reportedly stunned, and the guys voted to fire Peter Criss. But they kept him on to finish out the remaining shows. So 2 nights later in Jackson, Mississippi, Peter Criss, he did it all over again. Stopped playing mid-song with zero explanation during a performance of Stanley's solo track, Move On. Later in the show, after finishing Beth, the ballad that had become his signature moment, Peter threw the microphone on the floor and walked off the stage. And then at their Biloxi, Mississippi show, things actually got physical. At the end of the main set, as Kiss was taking their bows, Peter Criss decided to bean Gene Simmons in the back of the head as he was throwing his drumsticks to the audience. Now, he confessed, "I didn't mean to hit him hard, but the thick end of the stick, it whacked him." So then backstage during the break, Gene Simmons returned the favor with a kick to the shin. Words were exchanged before the guys took the stage, and after the encore, Peter Criss found one of Ace's empty champagne bottles, broke it against the table, and he went after Gene. Crew members had to physically drag him away before things got completely out of hand. Now, somehow the band regrouped. They went back out and played a second encore. Don't know how they did that. But afterward, Criss and Simmons begrudgingly shook hands. The final shows of the Dynasty tour, they wrapped up without any more incidents. But shortly after, Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, and Ace Frehley officially fired Peter Criss from the band, and that was it. And then, of course, recently, the shiz hit the fan again when I was interviewing Gene Simmons, and he said that Peter Criss didn't write Beth, and a feud through the press started again when Peter Criss fired back, and all of a sudden, They were in the middle of it again, and I was kind of in the middle of it with them. Rolling Stone reported on it. Many people commented in the press about it, including Eddie Trunk, who took a swipe at me. I don't know why. Here's part of that controversy.
The person who wrote Beth and Baby Driver and one or two more is a guy named Stan Penridge. Stan Penridge was in with Peter in a group called Chelsea.
Mm-hmm.
They had a record out, actually. I think it was on the MCA. So Peter did not write Beth. Peter did not write Baby Driver. Stan Penridge wrote that.
Oh, Beth, what can I do? Go, baby driver.
But through politics and hint, hint, nudge, nudge, and I wasn't there when the conversation went down, Stan Penridge apparently agreed that Peter's name would go in the songwriting credit. It appears first. Peter Criss, Stan Penridge, or Peter Criss, Bob Ezrin, Stan Penridge, or the other way around, but Peter's first. Peter had nothing to do with that song.
All right, we're at number 3, and I've got Chris Novoselic, Dave Grohl, and Kurt Cobain, and Smells Like Teen Spirit. Nevermind and Smells Like Teen Spirit became shorthand for the grunge upheaval of the 90s. Not their choice, but that level of exposure, it just was never part of their plan. The song's success caught Nirvana completely off guard, just as much as it did any of us, as Teen Spirit climbed to number 6 in the Hot 100 and number 1 in the alternative charts. And after Nevermind dethroned Michael Jackson's Dangerous as the number 1 album in the world, Nirvana's popularity snowballed until it became an avalanche. Cobain in particular never wanted the attention of the voice of a generation tag. So as Smells Like Teen Spirit began blowing up, Cobain tried to distance himself from the song as best he could. Said Kurt, "It's almost an embarrassment to play it. Everyone is focused on that song so much. The reason it gets a big reaction is that people have seen it on MTV a million times. It's been pounded into their brains." Now, elsewhere, he would say that he barely could get through the song playing it on stage, and some nights he just wanted to throw down his guitar and walk away altogether. Nevermind would drop an additional 4 retail and promo singles, Come As You Are, Lithium, In Bloom, and On a Plane. All of them did well on the alternative and modern rock charts and contributed to the album's 30 million plus copies sold worldwide. But it was Smells Like Teen Spirit that became the poster child for Nirvana's upstart success, of course.
Come as you are, as you were. Hey, my will is good. Yeah, yeah. She's got body, knows about what it means.
So in response, the band began undercutting it at every single turn. Kurt Cobain, Dave Grohl, and Chris Novoselic, they would deliberately mangle the song in concert by playing the wrong chords or even singing the wrong lyrics. And as a tease, they would often start the intro and then veer off into another song entirely. Smells Like Teen Spirit became the band's favorite weapon against their own success and popularity. One of the best incidents that illustrated this dynamic, that happened when Nirvana played Top of the Pops on November 25th, 1991. The BBC's weekly music show was famously rigid in its format, of course. Artists weren't allowed to perform their songs live. Instead, producers would play a backing track and the band was supposed to pretend to play along and sing along. But Nirvana, they didn't want to play along. After some negotiation, though, the show agreed to let Kurt Cobain sing it live. But everything else had to be mimed. Nirvana accepted the compromise, and then they proceeded to sabotage the performance. As the backing track began, the audience was already headbanging and clapping along. But as Kurt Cobain walked up to the mic, he made no effort to pretend like he was playing the song at all. Yeah, I mean, he strummed along on his guitar, but it was clearly out of time and with an open palm. And when Kurt reached the mic, he just stood there frozen in place, not moving until he finally launched into the lyrics. Load up on drugs. But when he did, he crooned the song in a deep theatrical baritone. He would later say that it was his best Morrissey impersonation. At one point, he put the microphone entirely inside his mouth instead of singing the lyrics. Now, meanwhile, Criss, he threw his bass over his shoulder and he swung it around his head, making zero effort to hide the fact that he wasn't playing. And Dave Grohl crashed his drums completely out of time with the track. They made a plan together to sabotage it. The performance ended with the audience jumping up on stage and Kurt waving his guitar over his head while the backing track played to fade out. As you can imagine, the BBC, they were not amused. For them, it was a complete disaster. But the fans absolutely loved it. I remember it. It was awesome. As Nirvana's short career pushed forward, Smells Like Teen Spirit became a symbol for Kurt of everything that he believed he'd lost. His privacy, his punk rock authenticity, and control over his band's narrative. September of '93, Nirvana released their third album, In Utero, and at least in part, it was a response to the commercial success of Smells Like Teen Spirit. On In Utero, the band pushed for a more abrasive sound, really to distance themselves from the grunge explosion. At this point, Kurt Cobain was far more excited about the direction of songs like All Apologies or Dumb, which he felt were more honest to his state of mind than the teen angst anthem that he wrote back in '90. All right, coming in at the number 2 position, the runner-up, I've got Oasis and their 1996 MTV Unplugged performance. And if you know anything about the Gallagher brothers, Noel and Liam, you knew that they were going to turn up somewhere on this countdown. The brothers sabotaged themselves. All right, so by summer of '96, Oasis, they were well on their way to becoming one of the biggest bands around. Their second album, What's the Story, Morning Glory, that had shifted 4 million copies on its release, would go on to sell 22 million copies worldwide. And in the UK, the album scored 2 number 2 hits, Roll With It and Wonderwall.
You've gotta roll with it, you've gotta take it time, you're my wonderwall.
And 2 chart toppers, actually, some might say, and Don't Look Back in Anger.
Some might say that we should never, but don't look back in anger, I heard you say.
Here in the US, only one song broke into the top 40 in the Billboard Hot 100, that was Wonderwall. But on the rock and alternative charts, Don't Look Back in Anger, Morning Glory, and Champagne Supernova all made a good showing and were huge here in America. Now, of course, stateside Oasis was never as big as they were back home and on the international stage, but they definitely had their chances to make it happen. When MTV came calling to tape an Oasis Unplugged special, this was going to be one of those opportunities, really probably the best opportunity to increase their visibility in the States. I mean, MTV Unplugged was massive in the 90s, you remember, especially in the US. It resurrected the careers of Eric Clapton and Rod Stewart.
If I saw you in heaven.
It leveled up newer acts like Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Alice in Chains. Now, the show was scheduled for August 23rd, 1996 at London's Royal Festival Hall. But from the get-go, there was some unnecessary drama. The trouble started well before the band even took the stage, though. MTV had put together a full professional crew, complete with horns and strings, and Oasis had 2 weeks of rehearsals scheduled. Everything was lined up perfectly. But lead singer Liam Gallagher, he showed up for about 3 of them. On day 1, Liam complained of a sore throat partway through a song, and he just walked off the stage. So Noel actually picked up the vocal duties, and rehearsal continued without him. Now, day 2, Liam showed up and sang even less, though. And then he just left early. According to Noel, over the course of the 2 weeks, Liam hardly bothered to rehearse anything at all. And MTV's production team, they were growing increasingly anxious. On the day of the show, with just an hour before start time, Liam walked through the doors completely dead-ass drunk. The band ran a quick test and Liam sounded really bad, dreadful. Just minutes before showtime, Liam pulled out entirely, citing a sore throat. Now, MTV had to make a decision from there. Walk away from the whole thing with a packed house waiting, or put Noel behind the mic. And they chose the latter. Noel would sing the entire set. Walking out to a bemused audience, Noel grabbed an acoustic guitar, he perched on a stool, and he delivered the news straight. Liam ain't going to be with us tonight because he's got a sore throat. So you're stuck with the ugly four.
Liam ain't going to be with us tonight because he's got a sore throat, so he's stuck with the ugly four.
But what followed was genuinely remarkable. Noel led the band through a warm, commanding, deeply felt performance. Without the chaos of his brother beside him, Noel was relaxed and he was completely in control. And to Liam's dismay, the audience ate it up. They loved it. And then someone spotted the frontman. Liam was up in a private balcony box, champagne in hand, watching his brother deliver what was shaping up to be an iconic performance. The moment a camera found him, he leaned into it though. Slow clapping for his brother, making sure that everyone in the building could see exactly what he thought of this whole situation.
He sort of acknowledged the fact that, yes, I'm up here drinking beer in the balcony and not performing today.
Then Liam started heckling his brother from the balcony. During his own band's MTV special, he was heckling the band. Noel, to his credit, he kept playing. But at one point, he looked up and told his brother directly, the least you could do is show a bit of support. I mean, can you imagine?
And then proceeded to heckle his brother and the rest of the band.
Shut up.
Now, the set wrapped to a standing ovation. And then the producer asked if Oasis could replay the opening song for technical reasons. Right on cue, Liam showed up backstage wanting to sing. A little too late, though. Noel told him where to go. And Liam, he went home sulking. The performance remains one of rock's great acts of self-inflicted absurdity. And somehow, because Noel rose to the occasion so completely, one of the most memorable nights in Unplugged history. So even though it was a sabotage, it actually worked out pretty well. All right, so for an honorable mention, I'm going to go with a 90s pop diva who put together a strong MTV Unplugged performance of her own. She just got nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, even though Boston didn't. I'm talking about Mariah Carey. She went down in history for another reason, though. For a disastrous performance. Talking about her New Year's Eve 3-song set in Times Square. The show was a train wreck. Thanks to technical difficulties, Mariah had to abruptly stop singing during her second song, the 1991 #1 hit Emotions. And Mariah Carey paced the stage telling the crowd, we can't hear, but I'll just go through the motions.
We're missing some of this vocal, but it is what it is.
Now, to her credit, she tried to make the best of the situation, even trying to get the crowd to sing the song as her pre-recorded vocals and high notes played in the background.
I'm gonna say let the audience sing, okay?
Afterwards, Mariah would claim that her performance was sabotaged by producers, citing technical failures, faulty earpieces, and a broken teleprompter. Mariah Carey's camp actually accused Dick Clark Productions of intentionally leaving her to flounder so that they could create a viral moment and drive up the ratings. I'm not sure that that's true. Reportedly, Mariah's team even asked DCP to cut the West Coast feed to spare her any further embarrassment. But of course, the producers refused.
Put these monitors on, please. All right, just relax.
Despite the blame game that dominated the first week of 2017, the story had a surprisingly wholesome ending. Mariah returned to the same stage for New Year's Eve 2017 to redeem herself, and that performance went off a lot better. Okay, we're at #1, and here I've got a band who epitomized the concept of self-sabotage. One of my favorite bands ever, and the most frustrating band in history for me. Talking about one that we've talked about a few times the last few weeks, The Replacements. Who else? Now, The Replacements formed in 1978 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The lineup featured frontman Paul Westerberg, the Stinson brothers, Tommy on bass and Bob on guitar, as well as drummer Chris Mars. The guys released their first record, Sorry Ma Forgot to Take Out the Trash, in 1981. They followed that with an EP called Stink in 1982. And these early records were kind of punk in spirit, and they boasted song titles like Gimme Noise and I Hate Music.
You're sleeping with danger. Don't give me that noise. Sometimes I don't. I hate music. It's got too many notes.
The Mats became notorious for becoming an unpredictable live act. I mean, band members were often drunk at showtime, and they often played campy renditions of old school country hits, TV theme songs, pretty much whatever they wanted to. I mean, on one night they could be the best band ever, and then the next night they could be the worst band ever, live anyway. Bob Stinson's drinking in particular derailed his performances, and Paul Westerberg wasn't far behind. In fact, in 1990, he said, "I've been waking up for years looking in the mirror and thinking, I got to put the bottle down. One day I looked in the mirror and said, if I was the bottle, I'd put me down." In 1986, Bob Stinson's drinking got so out of control that the band kicked him out and brought in Slim Dunlap the following year. But it wasn't just Bob that threatened to sabotage the band. It really was a group effort here.
No, their heads got really big or something. So I went to their last show and they were just drunk.
Famously, the Replacements appeared on Saturday Night Live also in 1986, and they got themselves banned from NBC. Once again, drunk and visibly disoriented, the guys were a complete wreck on stage. And throughout the set, Paul Westerberg forgot entire verses, and he ignored the no cursing rule, shouting an F-bomb directly into the mic. And the whole thing was an unmitigated disaster. A late-night disaster, if you will, and the network censors, they were pissed. Despite some serious self-destructing moments, the Replacements managed to keep it together enough to release a stream of iconic albums in the 80s. There were college rock staples. I mean, there was I Will Dare from 1984's Let It Be, Bastards of the Young from 1985's Tim. Can't Hardly Wait and Alex Chilton from 1987's Pleased to Meet Me. And I'll Be You from 1989's Don't Tell a Soul. In fact, by the end of the 80s, they were beginning to build up some serious momentum on the modern rock charts, with I'll Be You hitting number one. Tom Petty, he asked them to open on a Strange Behavior tour to support Full Moon Fever. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. It was their ticket to the big time. The tour was 40 shows, and it could have been their mainstream breakout moment if they'd wanted it to be, at least.
Sounds more like Bob Dylan style.
Well, it's my solo album. I can do anything I want.
So after a couple of brilliant shows that netted them some indifferent reactions from Tom Petty's Middle American fans, the Replacements said, to hell with it. It's time to sabotage.
Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Special guest, the Replacements.
It was a deep psychological blow to Westerberg, who said, we paid our dues, we went to a moderately big level, and then we went to a huge level on that Petty opening slot. But it was like playing a tiny club where no one cared except there was 20,000 of them every single night. We had this attitude, well, they didn't like our music, let's just let them remember us. On August 5th, 1989, they made sure of that. And this was at Nashville's Starwood Amphitheater. The Mats gave the audience truly something to remember. Before the show, the band went to the Heartbreakers' wardrobe, actually their mistress, Linda Bircher, and they started rummaging through the Heartbreakers' wives' clothes. They then showed up on stage dressed in drag. Downing a Jack Daniels, Paul Westerberg told the crowd, last night Tom Petty told us if we F up again, we're fired. Well, F you, Tom Petty, and F you, Nashville. Yeah, he told the city to do that. What followed was a performance that pretty much captured that sentiment. Then Paul Westerberg abruptly ended the show after 30 minutes and told the crowd, boo if you have the guts. The crowd, they responded right on cue. When the Heartbreakers took the stage, Tom Petty told the audience that since the opener played a short set, they were going to play extra long because they cared. Ultimately, the years of self-sabotage, that would catch up with the Replacements, and the band broke up in 1991. The Replacements could have been one of the biggest bands of their time. In fact, they should have been the biggest band of their time. But they sabotaged every chance that they got. And that's why they're our number one pick. It's very frustrating, but I still love the Mats anyway. Very punk rock. Leave us a comment about Sabotage. What do you think about this series? Should we do more? I think these stories are really interesting. I didn't know that Kansas and Aerosmith story. I'd heard parts of it, but I got some more from some stuff I've been reading lately. Great stuff. Share your memories. What other Sabotage moments should we share? What do you think about Kiss? What do you think about the Replacements, about Cyndi Lauper? I just think these are fun stories. They show the human experience of these artists. Let's have a great discussion below. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. Make sure to like and share and comment. got to keep this channel going. I'm doing my best. We're just not getting our content shown to people like we were back in the past. AI's taken over. Not let this be. We can't let this be. We got to keep the music alive. So till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends. Talk to you soon.